Okay. Good evening and welcome to the Ferguson-Florissant School Board Candidate Forum. My name is Amy Randazzo and I am the Children's Librarian at the Ferguson Municipal Public Library. We are excited to host this event along with PROUD and the League of Women Voters of Metro St. Louis. People Reaching Out for Unity and Diversity, better known as PROUD, is a group based in Ferguson that is committed to building a community of harmony and equity within a diverse group of people. You can find more information about PROUD by visiting www.proud-ferguson.org. The League of Women Voters is a nonpartisan organization dedicated to protecting and expanding voting rights. Louise Wilkerson from the League of Women Voters is our moderator tonight, and she will take it from here. Thanks again for joining us tonight.
Good evening, everyone. Welcome to the forum for candidates who are running for the Ferguson-Florissant Board of Education. As Amy said, I am Louise Wilkerson of the League of Women Voters of Metro St. Louis, and I will be the moderator for the forum this evening. As Amy said, the League of Women Voters is a nonpartisan organization striving to empower voters and defend democracy. What that essentially means is we do not endorse or campaign for or against any candidates. However, we do take positions on issues and pending legislation. We advocate for and we campaign against legislation that we don't agree with. Now, we believe one of the most effective ways to empower voters is to help them get information that will enable them to vote intelligently. So through this forum, we hope for the Ferguson-Florissant School District voters will get to know more about the candidates and where they stand on the issues. The League is very pleased to partner with PROUD and the wonderful Ferguson Municipal Library to bring you this event this evening. Thanks to Ms. Amy Randazzo, Children's Services Librarian, for inviting the League to moderate this forum for you. Our timekeeper this evening is Ms. Kate Meyer from the League, and there she is. Now, these are the ground rules for the forum. The candidates will have 2 minutes each for an opening statement. They'll have 2 minutes to answer each question. They will have 3 minutes each for a closing statement. They will answer all questions. So both candidates will answer all the questions. We ask the candidates to focus on what they believe. And we ask them not to refer to their opponents or the opponent's positions or remarks. The purpose of this forum is for them to present their own positions. Our timekeeper, Ms. Meyer, will time all opening and closing statements, and she will let them know when they have only 30 seconds left. That's the yellow paddle, if you will. She will indicate when their time is up by showing the red paddle that has stop in bold letters. So I think those are the essential ground rules. We're going to go ahead and introduce the candidates. It's now time to meet them. I understand that there are 3 candidates who are vying for 2 seats on the Board of Education. Fortunately, 2 of those candidates are with us this evening, Ms. Jillian Dunn and Dr. Sheila Powell-Walker. So we'll ask Ms. Jillian Dunn to give her opening statement at this time.
Thank you. Good evening. I'd first like to thank the Ferguson Municipal Public Library, the League of Women Voters, and People Reaching Out for Unity and Diversity for hosting tonight's forum. My name is Jillian Dunn, and I'm running for Ferguson-Florissant School Board Director. I've been a part of our district since 2015, and as a fresh graduate from Mizzou's College of Education, I began teaching freshman Algebra 1 at McClure North High School. During my time there, I strive to develop deep relationships with our students and work to improve student achievement through data-driven instruction. When my husband and I were deciding where to settle down, we ultimately decided on Fluorescent. We loved the community and also believed in our schools. In 2020, we welcomed our second child. Having always wanted to be a stay-at-home mom, I made the difficult decision to leave McClure North at the end of the 2021 school year. Very quickly, I realized I could not stay away from education. Our daughter had started pre-K at Parker Road, and I was ready to dive back in. I joined the Parker Road PTO and a district committee made up of a variety of people wanting to see our students succeed. My experiences having meaningful conversations with families, students, staff, and community made me realize everyone deserves to be a part of these conversations, and that is what led me to run for a seat on the school board. As a school board member, one of my goals is to continue to elevate parent and teacher voices. According to the National School Boards Association, one of the 8 characteristics of an effective school board is to have a collaborative relationship with staff and the community. In addition to monthly comments and a board rotation at our FFNEA meetings, we can attend staff meetings, PTO meetings, and school events, not to micromanage, but to hear what's happening in our schools from all points of view. If each member in our community knew my face and felt as if they could approach me to share their experiences, I would feel as if I was right on track. I look forward to sharing more of our platform this evening, and best of luck to Dr. Sheila Powell-Walker. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Dr. Sheila Powell-Walker will give her opening statement.
Greetings. Thank you to the League of Women Voters, Proud, and the Ferguson Library for putting together this opportunity for me to connect with all of you about the issues that matter in our schools. I am Dr. Sheila Powell-Walker. I am currently serving as president of the Ferguson-Florissant School District Board of Education. Elected in 2019 and coming to the end of my first term, I am seeking re-election. I am truly grateful to the Ferguson-Florissant School District community for allowing me to serve. My 20 years of experience in education and social services have developed within me the wisdom to lead and the passion to serve. My life's work has been about removing barriers and creating access, advocating for children and families, giving a voice to the voiceless, striving to ensure that all students, regardless of zip code or economic standing, have access to what they are entitled to, a quality education. I am excited to share that I have been endorsed by the North County Labor Union and the Ferguson-Florissant National Education Association, along with a number of elected officials. In the time I've served on the board, I've sought to champion the following areas: strengthening the connection between home, school, and community, reimagining the role of district safety and school resource officers, making connections between student well-being and academic performance, which does include expanding our partnerships with mental health providers, encouraging the use of interdisciplinary planning teams to assist students experiencing academic and/or behavioral concerns, and increased focus on post-secondary options other than college, and the use of a whole child restorative approach so that our schools are prioritizing the social and emotional well-being of our children, even when working through disciplinary concerns. I strongly believe that we must address the needs of the whole child if we are to keep our promise to educate all children well. Hello to my fellow candidate, Mrs. Dunn. I am delighted to be here this evening, and I look forward to the conversation.
Thank you very much. Well, let's get started with our questions. One of the candidates I think the candidates may have covered this in their opening remarks, but we'll ask them again just to emphasize. And the question is, if you should be elected or re-elected, what are your top 2 goals for the district?
Who would you like to go first?
Oh, I'm sorry. Thank you. Okay, so we'll start with Ms. Dunn.
Okay, thank you. So like I mentioned in my opening remarks, one of my top priorities would be to elevate that parent and teacher voice. I talked a little bit about how school board members could not only go to those FFNEA meetings and have comments from the community at the school board meeting, but also kind of be in it. So going to staff meetings, PTO meetings, and school events. And being there is not to be there to micromanage. Instead, being there is to listen. Because as a school board member, we have to be sure that we are listening to the whole community so that we are able to take their experiences into any decisions that are made. The second priority that I think is most pressing right now is teacher satisfaction. So we're entering a phase called the Great Resignation. The NEA, the National Educators Association, recently polled their members nationwide, and over 55% of their members, which is not only teachers, staff as well, but over 55% of respondents said that they were planning to, or they would like to leave the field soon. And so if that trickles down into the Ferguson-Florissant School District, we are going to see a lot of teachers leaving at the end of the school year. And so what we have to be considering right now is how we can be proactive to retain our teachers. And in addition to retaining our teachers, we need to be thinking ahead to the future of how we are going to recruit teachers. So with that retention, that could be looking at the plate of our teachers. Our NEA has spoken at board meetings and listed over 20 things currently on their plate. How can we take something off of their plate, especially if we're going to put other things on it? When we're talking about recruiting members, we just recently received a grant that part of that grant is to not only go to hiring more school social workers or counselors, but also to really invest into a grow your own program within our district.
Thank you. All right, same question, Dr. Powell-Walker.
Thank you. So I think I listed quite a few of the priorities in my opening, but a couple of other things that I would really like to see us do more work around would be the equitable distribution of our resources and personnel across the district, with the distribution being based on the school data that we have available to us and what that's telling us about the needs of the students, the teachers, and the people in that particular community surrounding that school. So I'd really like to do some more work around that. The other thing that I have noted here is I think that as a district, we've made some strides as it pertains to how we support our ELL students and families, but I think there's more work that could be done there. I think there have been some translations that have been put into place on our website and other things that we've done that have probably been good for families, but I'd like to see an increased focus on student achievement, and I'd like to see an increased focus around parental engagement in particular for those families. And then finally, although you didn't ask for a third one, I was just going to throw this one in. I do think we need to, in general, have a little bit more parental engagement around the issue of school safety. This is probably going to come up in our time that we're going to talk tonight, but we need to talk more about the role of the community and families in supporting schools with being safe.
Okay, thank you. All right, next question, and it's you sort of referred to it, so we'll ask Ms. Dunn to take this one. What is your position on having school resource officers in the schools?
Thank you. So what I can share is I can share some of my experiences with having school resource officers in our schools. The first experience I can share is at McClure North. We had positive celebrations for our students based off of things like their attendance and their grades. And I can recall having an ice cream party, and our school resource officers are there and they are scooping out ice cream to the students. Everyone's having a great time, great relationships are being made. On the opposite end of the spectrum, my only experience doing summer school, on my very first day of summer school, one of my students was getting into an altercation with another student, and he was handcuffed inside of his school building, in the safe school building, and escorted out in front of little ones. This was a year we had K through 12 in the school building. And so I've seen both the wonderful things that school resource officers can do in the school, but I've also seen what can be traumatic experiences for our students. And as far as what my personal position is, I think that there is a place for school resource officers in our buildings, but I think that we need to look at what their role currently is and work with the community to decide what that role looks like moving forward.
Thank you. Dr. Powell-Walker, same question.
Sure. So when I think about the role of school resource officers in our buildings, I think about it in two ways. On the one hand, there's been this big movement that says we don't need to have any police officers in our building, get the school resource officers out. And I think that in a perfect world, that's something we could, potentially do, but we're not quite there yet. And so I think that, in a situation where there are unsafe things that are happening inside the schools that teaching staff and administrative staff may not necessarily always be able to effectively respond to. I think you have to have school resource officers present, but I think that we need to be dictating their roles within our buildings. I think that we need to be determining at what point they become involved with students and to what extent. And so I think that's the piece for me that is missing. We need to be limiting how they engage our students, and we need to make sure that we are doing some things to be proactive with students with the hope we don't ever even have to get over to the place where the school resource officer has to be involved. I think that in order to do that, though, we're going to have to make sure that we shore up the skill sets of our teaching staff and of our administrative staff. So I think there's a place for them, but I think the district has to take a stance on how they will utilize them in our schools.
Thank you. Okay, Dr. Powell-Walker, we'd like you to start off with the next question. And both of you have referred to this, but I'm asking for a little more in terms of specifics. As a school board member, how would you support the equity work being done in the Ferguson-Florissant schools?
Sure. So as you noted, I've referred to that a little bit. I think one of the things we have to do is to be thoughtful and strategic about how we distribute resources and personnel across the district. The data that is in our buildings tell us the story of that building and what is needed to help students and staff and families be successful there. And I don't know that we've done a great job of that. Are you able to hear me okay?
Yes.
Okay, it was telling me my internet was unstable and you guys were frozen, so I was like,
yeah, you were frozen a bit too, but we could hear you.
Okay, good. So I would continue to do the things that I've been doing on the board, which is just raising issues of when we see issues happening across the district where things are not equitable. I would continue to raise my voice and say we need to be doing something different there. One of the things that I've pushed for is, and along with other board members, is to have a revamp of the student expectation code. And the student expectation code has to do with the discipline that is used, the discipline guidelines that are used to support students who maybe have some behavioral concerns. And so I think that's a huge step in the direction of equity. And so I would likely just continue to sort of champion that work, continue to push us to make sure that we're being thoughtful in our decisions that we're making about students when they have behavioral concerns. And of course, making sure that those resources are being distributed equitably.
Thank you. All right, Ms. Dunn. Same question.
So when we're talking about equity work as a school board member, what I think of is looking at the policies that we have in place and determining what barriers that are there that are keeping our students from being successful. One of the big things that I want to push for is to focus on those policies, but focus on those policies with our families as well. So our families themselves have their own barriers when it comes to being engaged and involved in our students' education. And so one of the things that I would like to do is work with the community to figure out what are those barriers that we currently have in place that are keeping our families, some families, from being able to be as involved and engaged as possible. This weekend, we held an event at a local community, local business, Latte Lounge, and that's really what we focused on, because a part of my platform is that we are engaging those stakeholders, as stakeholders being parents, students, families, teachers, community members, as much as possible. And what we really talked about is what ways do we already engage people? What are the barriers there? And what are some solutions to those barriers? And as we continue this equity work to break down the barriers for our students, we need to also be thinking about what are the barriers in place for our families and how can we break those down?
Okay, thank you very much. All right, so we'll start with Dr. Powell-Walker on this one. Here's the question. This has been the first full school year that students have attended school in person under the restructuring plan that was adopted several years ago. Do you see the need to make any changes to how the district is restructured?
So, I have some thoughts about things that could be different, but to be honest with you, I don't know that it's fair to judge the district in where it is right now just because of the way that the last couple of years have gone with regard to the pandemic. Students have spent a lot of time out of school. I don't think that any of those programs that have been put in place have been allowed to function as effectively as we would have liked to see them function. So for me, my thinking about that is I'd really like to see us have a full school year of, just normal school where we're not in and out of school or doing hybrid learning. I think that would give us a little bit more information. I've gotten really good feedback. Some people really like the restructuring and seem to enjoy this model being in place. And certainly there are people who feel differently about that. But for me, I would probably want to reserve my judgment until I could see a full school year with everything being in place.
Thank you. Ms. Dunn.
Thank you. So I believe when the restructuring happened, and I could be corrected if this is incorrect, there was the caveat that we would look into it after the end of 2 full school years and kind of determine, is this the direction that we're going to continue as a school district? And very similar to what was just stated, and in the question itself, we haven't had that time yet. So I do think that it's important to really make sure that we have the time under our belt to see if the restructuring is working. However, even though school has not been school, right? How we know school to be, there has already been a lot of feedback. And I've heard, especially, I have my own child in our pre-K program. I've heard a lot of feedback from those pre-K to families and even teachers in the buildings as far as what this is looking like. Is it what we thought it was going to be? And so anytime big decisions are made, I think that the data should be looked at as far as how this is working for our students. The surveys should be looked at as far as how it's working for our families, and not just the families who respond. I think that we need to make an effort to reach out to all of our families, finding ways to get their thoughts and feelings. Those families that have children in pre-K2 schools, 3 through 5 schools, at the high school levels, the families who are just starting out and figuring out what this is like, and get those voices to the forefront so that we are hearing them right now as far as what their experiences have been. That's part of the accountability, right? That we continuously have those checks. And so as far as, do I see any changes that need to be made? I think that is a bigger question for those who have all been experiencing it for the last 2 years, and to really hear those voices now and not wait until we are, 5 years down the road in this process.
Okay, thank you very much. Next, we have a question about something that's fairly controversial. It's been in the news a lot. I'm not sure if this particular voter really knows what it is, but I'm sure you candidates probably can shed some light on it. And the topic is critical race theory. And the question is, what is your position on critical race theory and the teaching of it? Now, I'm going to say this. I'm going to take a little bit of liberty here as the moderator. The League of Women Voters has studied this quite a bit, and what we have discovered is that no K-12 school district that we know of teaches critical race theory. And so I think the voters in the Ferguson-Florissant School District probably need to be better informed about what critical race theory actually is and what it is not. To that end, let me say the League has developed a fantastic one-sheet fact sheet about critical race theory and all that kind of thing. But anyway, let's just share your thoughts on it, and we'll ask Dr. Powell-Walker to go first on this.
Sure. So, Mrs. Wilkerson, I'm glad that you already made the point that no K-12 schools are teaching critical race theory in the purest sense. So I am definitely no guru, but my understanding of critical race theory is that when it was originally created, it was created by, some people on the law side, and it was really meant to shed some light on some injustices that were sort of coming to light within the legal justice system, meaning that Black and brown folks and poor folks were not being treated equitably within the system. And so, so that's where it started. Now, when we think about critical race theory as it pertains to education, I do think that it offers us an opportunity to look at different systems and the ways that they serve people who are Black and brown and people who are poor. And so not just for the justice system, but also for our healthcare system, also for the education system. So I think it affords us an opportunity to look more closely at that, because whether people agree with it or not, the data suggests that there could be something to it when we think about the outcomes for those people in those groups. And as far as the teaching of critical race theory in schools, I think that sometimes that stems from people not wanting the full truth of American history taught, because there might be some things in there that are ugly about our history. But the reality is that it is still the history and it needs to be taught. People need to be aware of what has happened, but they also need to understand that we've come a great ways as a country. And I think that together, working in truth, we can make sure that we continue to make progress.
Thank you very much. Ms. Dunn, your thoughts?
So just to piggyback off of what has already been said, we aren't seeing it taught in K through 12 schools. The first time I myself even was introduced to critical race theory was during my first year in a master's program in an equity class based on education. And just like the history that Dr. Powell-Walker just shared, we learned that it started in the law, the study of law, and those people who were, coming up with this theory and getting feedback on this theory saw the intersection in education and how, as policymakers, we might be able to utilize some of those tenets in the policy that we're creating. So as far as what my position on critical race theory is, it is an incredibly fun thing to learn about. And I think that this is something that we as a school district can kind of take upon ourselves to bring to the forefront of some conversations that we're having, because like what was said, there are a lot of people who maybe don't understand what critical race theory is, and they hear that word, that buzzword that's just kind of been thrown out there, and haven't had the opportunity to have the conversations around it. And I'm talking about for our parents and our adults and our community members, so that we have a full understanding of what it is and what that might look like when it comes to our policies and what we do. But as far as it being taught in our schools, it's not something that's being taught in our schools. It's a very complex idea. Not that our students can't learn complex ideas, but like I said, first year of grad school was the first time I had ever even been introduced to it. Thank you.
Thank you. Yes, and it came about in higher education, as a matter of fact, at the graduate school level. And it's just a way of looking at how our history has impacted our current laws and systems, sometimes in ways we don't even recognize, unintended consequences, but it has resulted in some racial inequities. I'll just be frank. And so critical race theory is often conflated with conversations about diversity, equity, and inclusion, and it's not the same. So anyway, but we want to make sure that the voter is comforted in knowing that it has not been taught at the K-12 level, and I don't know of any district that plans on teaching that. It's just, okay, thank you very much. Let us move on. What is your position. So, and we'll start with Ms. Dunn on this one. What is your position on the growing awareness and concerns about LGBTQ issues in K-12 schools?
So I'm not quite sure exactly what this question is wondering. Is it the growing awareness and concern? So I think that it's very important that we are supporting our LGBTQ students, our families in our school district with what their needs are in our schools to feel welcomed. Myself, even with our own daughter, you know, we teach when she's playing house, you know, mommy, mommy, there can be daddy, daddy, mommy, mommy, daddy, whatever that might look like. I think that what is my position on the growing awareness and concern? I think that we need to address them if those concerns come up so that our students feel safe in our schools. I think that it's important that this is just, you know, this is another group of people that we have in our schools that we need to support and make sure feel safe and welcomed. Again, I'm not quite sure exactly how to fully answer that question other than feel safe and welcomed in our schools.
Okay, thank you. Dr. Powell-Walker, same question.
Okay, so I guess when I think about that particular question, I think about our responsibility as an educational entity to make sure that those students are also being educated. And I do know that when we think about students who are members of the LGBTQIA+ community, we often run into situations where students are not being treated fairly even by their peers, or maybe being ousted or made to feel unwelcome in their schools. And so any of those things that impact the climate that we're trying to create in our schools to have children to feel comfortable and learn, those things can impact a child's ability to I guess, have full access to the learning environment. And so I think I've run into students in my job as a social worker who have needed counseling and other types of support just to make it possible for them to be able to be in school every day. And so my position on it, for me, it's an issue of equity. And I think we just have to make sure that we are doing all that we can do to support those students with feeling comfortable and having access to the resources that they need so that they too can be successful in school. And I think that also includes educating our teachers and our administrators. I think it includes providing resources to parents. And I think it also includes making sure our students understand that those students have rights and need to be treated appropriately.
Thank you very much. The next question is, if elected, and I guess we'll go with Dr. Powell-Walker on this one first. If elected, how would you engage parents and community members in efforts to strengthen the school district?
Okay, so when you say, how would I engage students, how would I engage parents in an effort to strengthen the school district?
And members of the community, whether they're parents that have kids in the school district or not.
Sure, so the board is currently doing a little bit of work around that under the umbrella of just safe schools. And so creating opportunities to hear from parents, whether it is over Zoom or whether it is in person. Of course, right now we're kind of in this hybrid sort of a space, so we have to figure that out as we go along. But opportunities, I think regular opportunities to connect with all of the stakeholders to hear their thoughts. I think that's the only way that we can create the schools that we want to have in our community. I think the board has talked about the idea of sort of positioning ourselves in different parts of the district to make the accessibility better for certain people who may not be able to come all the way over to the boardroom. We've talked about that. We've talked about having town halls. We've also talked about engaging local elected officials to talk about how we might partner in support of our schools, because I do believe that the community has a role to play in making sure our schools are what we need them to be.
Thank you very much. Ms. Dunn, same question.
So this is what I'm very excited to talk about. I think that community, parent, teacher engagement is going to be the staple of us having our students higher achieving. And when we're talking about achievement, we're talking about so many different things more than just our grades. I think that the board has done a great job getting started with that. Dr. Powell-Walker mentioned the safe schools. We just had a forum back in January. Something that I would like to work on when it comes to that, though, is having those forums earlier and more frequently and often. And so the board has a lot on their plate. There's a lot of different things the board is focused on. And so in order to kind of get those things moving more quickly, I think that forming different types of committees of different stakeholders, very similar to, I'm currently on our district strategic plan steering committee, different type of committees over those big topics like school safety is going to kind of get the ball moving a little faster, because these are urgent things that we need to be working on. And so how to get more people engaged, that's a great question. We have wonderful ways of getting parents engaged through things like the thought exchange, surveys that go out, but those are the parents who are going to, and the community members who are going to seek out how to get involved in those ways. So I think it's very important that we are finding ways to get out into our community more so that we can let the community know what really is happening in our schools, and we can get those voices as well. We have programs already in place, like our Parents as Teachers, which goes into the homes of our youngest students in the Ferguson-Florissant School District. That's one program that we might be able to put a little bit more into so that we can get those parents early, and we can help them to gain the social capital to be able to navigate the schools even better as they continue on in their 12 plus years of being members of the Ferguson-Florissant School District.
Thank you. Okay. So Dr. Powell-Walker, we'll start with you on this question. The question is, recently there has been growing anti-police sentiment across our nation. Should anti-police sentiments be included in the curriculum and materials in our schools?
So I guess I would have to say no to that. I don't think that we want to teach our students that some of our greatest community helpers are people that they should be against. I think that there have been some legitimate issues that have happened in our communities. I think we have to remember that those were individual people likely acting outside of what their districts, I guess I should say their precincts would probably have wanted. Right? I don't know that there's a precinct out there that's going to condone inappropriate behavior. Now, we might discover as we go along that not enough of appropriate training or measures were put in place to keep that from happening. But I don't think we should be teaching our students to be against our police officers. We should instead be trying to build relationships with our police officers, because again, they are helpers in our community, and we want to figure out how to work collaboratively with them, not against them.
Thank you very much. Ms. Dunn, same question.
So I also do not believe that anti-police sentiment should be included in our curriculum and materials in our schools. I think that having conversations of real events that have happened with our students is, of course, always open for discussion. So I don't think that is saying, though, all police officers are bad. This is just, we're not hiding different truths that have happened in our community and other communities. I think that it's important that we continue to work to strengthen relationships between our police officers and our students and our families. But to answer the initial question, should anti-police sentiment be included in our curriculum and materials? No.
Okay. Thank you. Next question. So we'll start with Ms. Dunn on this one. And this one is somewhat related to a question we've already had, but it's a little bit more specific. It's, what is your position on children making gender choices for themselves? At what age should children be allowed to make gender decisions for themselves? And what do you see as the school district's role in such a matter?
I don't feel as if it's appropriate for the school district to have a position on what gender choices our students make. I think that we need to support our students as best as we can, and a student's gender is not really my business.
Okay. All right, thank you. Dr. Powell-Walker, same question.
I would have to say that I agree with Mrs. Dunn. I don't think this is something that schools should be heavily involved in. The role I do think we play is making sure that those students are respected and treated well when they're at school, that they have issues that pop up that may be related to sexual orientation or gender identity, what counseling support may be necessary for those students. Because again, we do want to create conditions that allow students to learn. So if we recognize that a child's gender or sexual identity is something that's getting in the way of that, then we want to become involved as a school. As far as my position on children being able to make those decisions and at what age, I actually believe that's something that the family should work out at home. Having been a social worker and a counselor, I've worked with families on this issue before, and my response has been to get them connected with a family therapist so they can sit and have a conversation and think about how they want to manage this issue as a family.
Okay, thank you very much. We will start with Dr. Powell-Walker with this question. And I'm sure this has come up sometime over the past couple of years. What is your position on school districts mandating COVID-19 mitigation measures such as vaccinations and masks?
Well, you are absolutely correct when you say that that has come up a time or two, right, over the last couple of years. And so my position on it, it goes back for me to making sure that we are creating schools where children can learn and be safe. One of the things I've shared in a prior board meeting before is that, you know, everybody has very strong opinions about this issue on one side or the other. And we try to get the community to understand that you feel very strongly about that issue, but just across town, there's another family in this district who feels exactly the opposite of the way that you do. So it is a challenge trying to balance the wants and needs of everybody who's involved in all of this. My personal opinion about it is that we have to follow the science in Ferguson-Florissant School District. We cannot look at what other districts are doing. We cannot listen to, you know, a mandate that is being put out for the entire state of Missouri. We are made up, the state of Missouri is made up of many different diverse communities with different needs. And we have to make sure that we are putting measures in place that support the people that live in that particular community. And so that's what we've attempted to do as a board. We've put things in place that met the needs of students at those particular times. And we've done the very best that we could to try to keep those measures in place, but to also, like very recently, we've pulled back a little bit on some things because the numbers said that we needed to do that. So that would be my stance on it. Those are things that are necessary to keep our students safe, to keep our doors open, to make sure students can continue learning. And while we know it's not something that everybody agrees with, it is what we felt was necessary. So I agree with needing to have those things in place.
Okay, thank you. Ms. Dunn.
I believe that a school district's responsibility is to keep our children safe at all times, keep them healthy as well as we can, so that they can be in school learning. We saw 2 years ago our school board have to make a very difficult decision to move our students from in-person to virtual, and that shift happened in less than a day. I was a teacher during the COVID-19 times. We were in school with students on a Tuesday, we were virtual by Wednesday, and that was not an easy easy decision for the school district to make. And there was a lot of things that we as teachers, we as families had to figure out. And that went on for about a year. It was March of 2021 until we were back in schools. And even then, we had to have those mitigation strategy or mitigation measures in place to help keep our students safe. If we wouldn't have done that, we can play the if we would have, game all day. So let me actually not go there. But the school district's responsibility is to keep students as safe as possible. And if that means that we have to put COVID-19 mitigation measures in place, then that's what we need to do.
Okay, thank you very much. Okay, let's see. So here's the next question. And it simply is, how will you, and I guess we'll start with Ms. Dunn on this one. How will you, as a board member, ensure fiscal prudence in how the district's resources are used? And the voter supplied a detailed example, so let me share it with you. The voter said that, for instance, recently in an area school district, the school board and administration paid a third party for intruder/emergency training and at the same time, the St. Louis County Police and Fire Districts provide the training free of charge. So that now I have no idea what district they're talking about, and I have no idea whether that's what actually happened or not. But this person wants to make sure that the district doesn't spend money for something that's free. I guess that's it. That's it, essentially. Did I say Ms. Dunn would start that? Okay.
So to go to the question itself about ensuring fiscal prudence and how resources are used, I think that the number one thing that school board members would need to look at is our strategic plan. And so our strategic plan is a plan that's put in place that kind of guides the district on where it's going for the next 5 to 10 years. And in that plan, there will be goals, measurable goals for the school district to follow. And so when we're trying to make decisions as far as where to put our money and how to spend our money, I think it's important as a school board member that we're asking the question, how does this fit into our plan and how does this fit into our goals, where we want to be in 5 to 10 years? In regards to potentially spending money on something else that is a free resource, I think at that point we need to put some faith into our administrators that we are doing research as much as possible. Just maybe it was 2 board meetings. I think it was Mr. Terry O'Neill. He came to the plate with research behind different companies that were potentially going to be contracted out in our school district. And I might be kind of getting that wrong because I got a little bit lost in some of the jargon, if I'm being quite honest, but really having that research in place beforehand. And so hopefully during that time, and even as we're, having conversations with our community members, we're going to learn of other programs that are available so that can be avoided if that is what happened. But as far as having that fiscal prudence, I think that it is important to go back to that strategic plan at all times because that is there in place with voices of teachers, administrators, community members, businesses, parents, students. All of those voices went into the plan. And so that's how we should determine where our money is spent.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Dr. Powell-Walker.
Okay, so ensuring fiscal prudence. So the board currently receives regular financial reports that allows us an opportunity to ask questions about what is being put in front of us. I would probably also add that whenever someone wants to, if there's some work that needs to be done in the district, there is a bid process that we have to adhere to make sure that we are being fiscally responsible with the community's money. The other thing I would probably add is we want to make sure as a board, if you've ever listened to any of our meetings, we do try to make sure that proposals are aligned with our goals. And we also, so there's a process that happens every year. There are certain programs we have in place that are brought to the board for renewal every year. And one of the things that I particularly do, and other board members have begun doing this too, is asking about the impact of the program. Not just coming and saying, let's now have a renewal of this reading program, or let's now have a renewal of this math program, but what has been the impact on students? Because while How would we keep renewing something that has not helped, that we don't have the data that supports that it's actually helping students? And so those are some of the things that I think that we do as a board, and I'm sure, practices that we would continue to make sure that we are being fiscally responsible with the community's money.
Thank you. All right, and I think we're coming up on the last question. Wow, where did the time go? You ladies have done a fantastic job. So here's the question. Sadly, our nation is gripped in a climate of extreme polarization. And that exists throughout the nation. And so the question is, how will you, as a member of the Ferguson-Florissant Board of Education, work to kind of unite stakeholders in the district so that everyone is sort of pulling in the same direction? So I'll ask Dr. Powell-Walker to tackle that first.
Okay. So I would agree that we are dealing with a lot of polarization. I think that one of the ways that we can create some unity is to think about what we all likely care about, and that's our children. We may not agree about many other things, but most of us agree that we care about our kids and we want them to be safe. We want them to be successful. As a district, we've done some ABAR work, anti-bias, anti-racist work, which I think is the beginning of trying to improve culture and climate so that we can start to overcome some of those barriers. The other thing I think that is important is making sure that we are equipping students with skills to learn how to interface with others who may be different from them, because that's not just necessarily a skill that they need for every day in school, but they need that in life as they go out and begin to go into the different communities that they'll go into and hold the different jobs that they'll hold. They have to know how to get along with other people. And I think if I can answer this a little bit more under that umbrella of school safety, when we think about school safety, one of the things that people will say is like, what is the school going to do? What are the districts going to do to make sure that the school is safe? What's the district going to do? How are they going to fix that? And my response to that is, the issue of school safety is a community problem. It's not just an issue that's going to be fixed by the school. Schools are safe. We can go to the building right now. The building is sitting there safe. It's not bothering anybody. The problem happens when people come into the buildings and begin to do unsafe things. And so how do we work with parents? How do we work with community leaders? How do we work with legislators to make sure that we are setting our schools up to safely educate our children and making sure everybody understands that they have a part to play in that? And I think that is an issue that many people can unite around.
Thank you. Ms. Dunn.
So this question goes back to, we were asked earlier about how would we support the current equity work that's being done and how would we engage parents and community members in order to strengthen our district. To me, it's all about the engagement. While there is the polarization, oftentimes, it maybe is not just one time, but when you're able to sit down and have conversations, open conversations with people who are different than you in different kinds of ways. So let's even talk about within our own district, the type of polarization we have when we're talking about our districts that merged many years ago. When you have that type of polarization, what's going to start breaking down some or uniting people is hearing each other's stories and being able to find those commonalities and things that you can unite together upon. And so I think that it's really important as a school board, as leaders in our school district, that we are creative and innovative with ways that we are getting our families and students and community members engaged and involved into our schools. That's what it comes down to. How are we going to get more voices there? I saw this man talk once. We talk all the time about the table. There's the table and bringing voices to the table. He talks about dismantling the table. Why is the table there in the first place? How can we get rid of that table and get as many people a part of the decisions that are being made as possible? And I think once we really tackle that and get those voices there, we're going to see a lot more unity. We say one district united, a lot more unity within the Ferguson-Florissant School District.
Okay, thank you very much. Well, ladies, that was our last question. Whoa. So we're now up to our closing remarks, and I think we'll go with the 2 minutes this time, Ms. Meyer. I'm looking at the clock, so I think we better go with 2 minutes. Okay, so let's start with Dr. Powell-Walker first.
All right, thank you. I would probably just say thank you for the opportunity to just be here tonight, to have an opportunity to discuss issues that are important to the people in the school community. You know, I would probably just close with noting that I genuinely care about the children and families in this community. I understand the challenge of raising children and worrying about the quality of the education that they are receiving. And I would really like to use my voice to continue to advocate for safer schools, academic excellence, and equitable access. And with your support, I can do that. I want to remind the community that the Ferguson-Florissant School District is unique in that our election for school board members uses something called cumulative voting. And so this means that each voter gets the same number of votes as there are seats available. This election cycle, there are 2 seats available, and this means that you get two votes on April 5th. And so I am asking you to consider casting your votes for me on April the 5th. I do believe myself to be the candidate who understands the assignment that we have before us as it pertains to educating our children and making sure that they are prepared to go out into the world and create a life of their choosing. I'd also like to note that the ARPA survey is out there on St. Louis County's website. My understanding is that the percentage of people who have completed it is rather low, and that's the American Rescue Plan Act. It will help us to make some decisions about how money is going to be spent in our community. The survey closes on the 25th, and so I want to encourage people to go out and complete the survey because you have a voice in talking about what needs to be happening in government, infrastructure, childcare, healthcare, and then in general things that we can be doing to improve our economy. And so just please go out and take care of completing the survey. I also want to note that a solid education will allow our children to build stronger families and stronger communities, and it will ensure the promise of a better tomorrow. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, Ms. Dunn, your closing statement, please.
So I'd like to say thank you to all the organizations that put together this forum. I've been having the opportunity talking with lots of residents as we've been going out and passing out literature just to kind of get our name out there. And we've talked a lot about how, you know, this whole campaign process and going through an election is something that's new to me, that I've never experienced before. But even though I've never experienced this before, what I do know is that I'm passionate about our students in the Ferguson-Florissant School District. Having been a teacher in our district for 6 years, I can tell you without a doubt, I've loved every single student I've ever seen come through my doors and then walk across that stage at graduation. I'm passionate about making sure that our students are receiving the best education that they possibly can so they can live the life that they envision and deserve. So we're not just talking about necessarily what their post-grad goals are, but what is that life going to look like? I'm also extremely passionate about parenthood and getting those voices together of parents so that we can build our community, because our community is more than just our own household, but it's those who are in our district with us, who are raising their children with us as well. And I'm passionate about leadership. So again, I may not understand how this whole campaign process works, but I'm passionate about those 3 things. And I believe that I would be an excellent member or an excellent addition to our current Board of Education. And I just want to thank you again for having us come here tonight. You can find some more information about me on our website, dunnpreferredfloor.com. Also, we're very active on our Facebook, and that's Jillian Dunn for Ferguson-Florissant School District 2022.
Thank you very much. Okay, so I want to thank the Ferguson Municipal Public Library and Proud, and the volunteers from the League of Women Voters, Ms. Kay Meyer, of course, and Barbara Harris, who always helps us organize forums. If you found this forum to be helpful, think about joining or supporting the League of Women Voters. Go to our website at www.lwbstl.org. And check us out. And by the way, we have a lot of men in our organization too. We could really use your help. If you want to check out issues and candidates in this election cycle, go to www.vote411.org. It's online. Also, I believe the Ferguson Municipal Library probably has some voters guides, some printed voters guides. So you might want to check that out. So don't forget to vote on April 5th. Democracy is not a spectator sport. You need to be involved and you need to participate. So with that, I'll say good evening and turn it back over to Ms. Amy Randazzo.
Thank you, everyone, for joining us tonight. I'm so sorry for the technical issues that we had earlier. Just to let everybody know, if you're watching this still with us live, we will have the full candidate forum uploaded to our YouTube channel tonight. So please visit us at fergusonlibrary.net. We'll have a link to that because I know we kind of cut in the middle of the opening statements at the beginning. So we want to make sure both candidates are heard. So thank you all for joining us tonight. Thank you for Proud. Thank you to the League of Women Voters and to our candidates, Dr. Sheila Powell-Walker and Jillian Dunn. Thank you all tonight. And have a good evening, everybody.
Okay, thank you. Good night and good luck, ladies.
Thank you.
Okay.